Well, like, was there a moment? Because like the story you're telling me up to this point is you were playing a lot of funk and you were playing a lot of reggae and you were listening to a lot of funk and you were listening to a lot of reggae within black music. Like, was there a moment you heard a hip hop tune and you go like, "Holy shit! Like this is something else. I've never heard anything like this before." Or did it just kind of creep in?
No, I would say I got overwhelmed by the combination of everything. I mean, every year there would be a highlight in terms of getting a new song that struck me a certain way, because there was a lot of great music that was being made at the time. I'd say more than songs making a shift in how you feel, it was the artists that came in that created the shift.
Yeah.
The artists at some points were bigger than the song in terms of the momentum and the evolution of hip-hop over the years. For example, when Run DMC came in, they were game changers, right? We'd never seen anything like it before. And years later, Boogie Down Production, Eric B. and Rakim, each artist represented a different phase, a different era. Salt and Pepper, the same thing. Later on, we get the Eminems and the Drakes, etc. But those represent shifts in the whole movement of hip hop. When those artists came in, everything changed that came before them.
Did you have a favorite song back then? Did you have a favorite hip hop song back then? Come on.
I like the Audio 2, Top Billin', for some strange reason. That's still one of my favorite songs to this day. I just love the way that it's produced. And Public Enemy's Rebel Without a Pause.
Yeah,
that was a song that it has this bug sound in it, and that sound got to me. It was like being on crack when you heard that song, man. It just made you want to bug out on the dance floor. It's like this backward scream that goes throughout the whole song. And I think it hypnotized me, because that's the song that made me love Public Enemy. Everything else didn't matter. And I kept pushing that song and pushing it and pushing it. Brothers and sisters, what's this world coming to? And then, boom,
Yeah.
You don't see Ron Nelson dance a lot, but I used to dance when that song came on the dance floor and push it on people.
You weren't just playing hip hop from the States, though. You were also spotlighting local Toronto hip hop acts. The Maestro, Dream Warriors, Michie Me. How do you describe that era of Toronto's independent rap scene?
How can I describe it? Innocent. We did not know ourselves. We didn't understand our identity at the time. We were giving more love to American rappers and American culture, not because we didn't love our own culture, but we didn't understand what our culture was at the time. We were still searching for identity. So during that time, I was there. I was hanging out with all the guys because I had a recording studio in my house. So all these hip-hop artists came to me, and we wouldn't just make music, but we would talk and have conversation, right? And when it came to gangster rapping, for example, one of the questions we joke around was, yo, you're making gangster rap, but you're not a real gangster. Whereas those guys in New York are real gangsters. They're not real. Yeah, they are. Those lyrics are real. They really do kill people and shoot people and stuff like that. And then, so we'd have this fascination about American culture without really understanding it ourselves. So in a way, we were kind of following fashion, following a trend. We didn't have a sense at that point in time of setting the trends. So the early artists were very much under influence of what they heard in American culture.
Right.
And we had one thing that was different, though. We had a little bit of West Indian twang to our sound. We had a little bit of a more West Indian identity. America absorbs you, so you become an American West Indian. But in Canada, you still had a chance to be West Indian Canadian, or Canadian where you can still keep your own identity. So people like Michie Me and MC Rumble, what's different about them? They put a little reggae, a little dancehall, a little twang in a little patois in their sound, and that made them stand out. That's what made them distinct. That's what made them different.
Did you know it was different back then? Did you have any idea that our thing is different?
Absolutely, because you saw it when you saw the events and you went to the concerts. When we saw that we were capable of representing in hip-hop and playing our part and doing our part, and we had an audience now, because the concerts were now, at least the ones that I was doing, were not just featuring American artists, but we had Canadian artists open. And at some point we had them battle, right? And when you see the reaction and you look at the demographics of the audience that attended, you saw in the beginning a very colored audience, a very black audience, and an audience that came from the poorest parts of Toronto. They came from the ghettos, the region, the Flemingtons, the Jane and Finch, the jungles, and these areas maybe didn't like each other very much, but guess what? The music united them, because they would put away the bull crap at that point in time
Yeah.
and just loved music because they couldn't find it anywhere else. So before we had to listen to it, but now as more West Indians were populating Toronto, we were going out and congregating amongst ourselves where it was still black music and it was mostly black people attending. So you would see the reactions and you would see the love and you would see the response and you would hear the cheers and you would know as a DJ or as a promoter what's moving the people at the time. So you could see it coming.
How did you end up being a concert promoter in the first place? Like, how did you end up like going from being a DJ to a concert promoter?
No qualification whatsoever. It was more of a pressure from the telephone lines at CKLN that used to feature people calling in wanting to hear their favorite songs. But now they didn't have a representative bringing these artists to them in concert. So they didn't care whether or not Rod Nelson was qualified. They made it a demand that I started bringing these artists to town, and
Really?
I spoiled it. That's an actual fact.
Yeah.
Okay.
People were calling, being like, "I don't care if you don't promote concerts. You were playing these art. You're the only person playing these artists. You got to bring them in."
There was no other black people in a position at that time that was trying to champion the music. Right. There were black people making noise and stuff like that. We had Much Music and Electric Circus, stuff like that. But no one was living on the streets. And I'm telling you right now, in order to be qualified to do what I did, you had to live on the streets. I woke up and lived hip hop and rap all day. You can't be inside sitting behind a desk. You have to be out there talking to people, going to the jams, spending time making flyers and buying records and hearing other DJs play and going to other people's show to really get a sense of the market and then be on top of it at the same time. So I started doing concerts in my bedroom at my mom's house. That was my office. And the first phone call would wake me up out of bed, and then I'd still be in my friggin' underwear and T-shirt for the next 2 hours because I wouldn't have a chance to take a shower, because guess what? Cara Lewis is on the phone from New York, and she's talking to me about bringing Ice-T or Queen Latifah or whatever it is. At this point in time, America has no respect for Canada because there hasn't been any players before trying to do what I'm doing. So they're kind of feeling me out at the same time. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the credibility to them. They wanted to break artists.
Yeah.
So it was in their best interest to have their artists travel to Canada. A lot of their artists on their roster had never been to Canada. So when I brought them, it was the first time. So over time, a trusting relationship had to happen. And that's how I just kept doing concerts. It cost me a lot of years of my life because for a lot of it, I couldn't work at a regular job. You know what I mean? I had to get investors at some point. I had to borrow money from people and then pay them back afterwards. I had guys like Mastermind, DJ X, DJ Power, all of these guys and their girlfriends would be guys that we would have in my little Toyota driving from intersection to intersection in the whole city with Scotch tape and wallpaper glue and brushes and a bucket. And our job to promote every show was to plaster every lamp pole at every major intersection from east to west. So we'd go from Finch and Weston Road, let's say, all the way to Markham and Finch, and then go down and do Shepherd East all the way to Shepherd West, and then Lawrence East to Lawrence West. Like, we'd map out the whole 2,000 posters. And back then, there wasn't any, YouTube or Instagram. Like, we had no other way to advertise other than to put a flyer into your hand. So it became my life. I didn't know what was in store. I got suckered into doing promotions, basically, but I'm a pleaser. I like to please people. So when they wanted it, and I look around and said, nobody else is trying to do it. And if they are trying to do it, their credibility is not good because some of these shows that were promised weren't delivered. And people would lose money and walk away with disappointment. I saw that as a step back for the movement of the scene. So I came along, my track record was almost perfect. I delivered everything that I said I would.